I'm gonna probably stand, again, my name's Ranson Goodman. It's good to be back in Dyer County. I get to come every year for grain conference. It's always a good time to be here for that. But at the same time, I got to start off as an extension agent, 4-H agent here back in the mid to late 1990s. And it was through about 2000. I left, went back, got my master's, came back and extension, been in Obion County and over in Hendry County now. In the old days, you kind of moved up through the change when you do work for extension. You start as a 4-H agent, become a split agent where you did 4-H and adult, and then you one day become adult ag agent. And that's kind of how my 27 and a half years have gone for me in extension. But Dyer County was always my first, enjoyed it here, and I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm here to talk to you about creating habitats for wildlife. For me personally, this has been a fun project. One year, my son's senior year in high school, he came up to me and says, "Dad, I got to come up with a agri-science project for my last year in high school." And I was like, "Well, son, what are you gonna do?" They said, we've done variety trials, we've checked bug traps, and so you've done all kinds of things in agriculture when it comes to row crops. But what are you gonna do now?" He says, "Dad, people come to your office every year and ask you, what corn do I need to plant in my duck hole?" And the first thing you tell them is the cheapest or the freest you can get. And that's the way it normally is. So you got leftover corn or something, you go put it in the hole and you plant it and hope for the best. And that's kind of how it all started out. So I said, okay, if we're going to do this, what are we looking for? He says, well, everybody wants to produce a lot of yield. So let's look at yield. I said, okay. And then we tried to figure out what else can we make this project special. And what we decided was I grew up duck hunting on the Tennessee River, and I came here when I worked here and worked duck hunting down here. And no matter if you're duck hunting down here at the Mississippi River area or you're duck hunting on the Tennessee River, one thing about it is everybody runs into the same problems. First and foremost is water. How much water do I have? How can I get it? What am I going to do with it? So water is something we got to know. So if you got water issues or you don't have water issues, that really can help depend on what I need to plant for my waterfowl or for my duck hole. And if I don't have much water, then I may have to look at millet or something. Corn's not even an option. But if I do have an option, if I can find certain varieties that will work, that their plant characteristics will work with my situation, that's what we went with. And that's what he started doing for his agri-science project. And he actually was a gold finalist at National FFA Convention for agri-science. So it was a really great project. We did it that year, and then we have continued that project. We went with TWRA and got with them and sat down and asked them, can we really want to plant this in an environment that is considered what our guys are going to run into? An area that is going to be planted late, has standing water in it. It's stressed, it's corn after corn every year in these areas. We wanted to maximize that. So we asked them, could we use your WMAs to go in here and do this? And that's where we've been working with TWRA in some of the wildlife management areas in the Henry and Benton County areas is where we've been doing this. And so that's kind of how this project got started, why we wanted to do it. And but when you're going to do it, so the things I'm trying to figure out which button it is to push for the next slide. There we go. The next thing we have to figure out is why do we want to plant corn? What's the advantage of corn? One thing we know about waterfowl is they forage. And as they forage, they're going to need temperature fluctuations are going to make them change their food appetites. And the reason is because they need carbohydrates. The carbohydrates are going to help keep them active and maintain their body temperature. That's why we think about the corn in general. It's high energy, and foods like corn will fill that need that they need. The other thing a lot of people don't think about is when we get into some of these areas, especially these big open areas where we flood for duck holes, there's no area for a duck to hide. There's no habitat for them. So they don't feel real safe. So a lot of times they're up or flying or moving, they may not stay long. The food's the only reason they're there. You bring in corn, which it gets below that 30-degree mark, they need that high energy, which starts getting below 30 degrees. Well, we know that. Well, then if you got corn standing, it gives them a place to hide and get away from predators. So now it's not only giving them high energy, a place, now it's also giving them a place, habitat to stay where they feel safe away from predators. So it's kind of another opportunity why corn is kind of good. But the big reason why we want to plant corn is, in my opinion, is for the carbohydrates. It allows them to keep their body temperature where it needs to be and stay active when it gets really cold. Because when it's not below 30, if it's up around 40, we know they're going to be some of these more moist soil type plants that are growing wild and get flooded as well. So it's kind of a combination of the two. Now, where we've done our trials in the past, we've chose Camden Bottoms and we've chose Gin Creek. Anybody ever been to Camden Bottoms, Gin Creek in here? Gin Creek is in a not far from Big Sandy, kind of right there in between Big Sandy and 641 North South. And Camden Bottoms is right before you cross the river on Highway 70 going to New Johnsonville, leaving Camden. That's where those two are. We chose these two areas. They're easy to get to. This one you put in, both put in, go in, and we put it right there in that 50-51 field. And in Camden, we come over here and we put in this field right here. We start planting right here and plant all the way up to right there. And we do a variety of trials there every year. We try to, unless we get flooded out. These areas we pick because of the normal environmental stressors that you find in a lot of these duck holes. Now, if you're planting your row crop fields, it may not be quite the same. But if you're planting in areas that stay wet and heavy, these are the type of areas that we need to go put this in to be able to give these varieties a different chance. Because you go plant some of these same varieties and you go put them in a standard row crop field and plant them in April and May, they're going to be booming, 200 plus bushel corn. You put them down here and you plant this in the end of June, 1st of July, it's an entirely different monster. The yields will be way different. Even the plant height is going to vary. It's kind of it's a huge difference, but that's kind of where we plant them. We've chosen these bottoms strictly because of we can get in and out of them very good. They'll also take and treat it like a normal agricultural process with planters and sprayers and so forth. They help us. And we normally use current normal agricultural process. We don't do any extra. We may do a little less, but standard normal process is what we normally go with on these. Now, when we go in and get ready to try to collect our data, the things we're looking for when we do our dry land harvest is plant population, ear height, plant height, kernel counts, yield, and standability. We give rating scores for every one of those things. Plant population, one of the big reasons we do, we all know seed size changes. And with seed size, we know if you start with one standard plant population, seed size will kind of change depending on the plates and so forth and how you got it set. Ear height, plant height, we all use that as our plant characteristics for later on. And then your kernel counts. So your kernel counts and plant population goes towards how we determine yield. When you plant in a WMA like this, you're not allowed to take corn out. Corn has to stay in, so we can't run in there with combines. So we have to go in there and do hand yield harvest calculations. So that's why we do the yield, the ear counts on that as well. When we get ready to do our flooded harvest data, we go back in there and we measure the water depth, difference from water level to ear height, and then we do feed ratings. The reason how you do your feed ratings is going to be kind of correlates with the difference between water level and ear height. That all goes together on how we determine how the floods rates. Now, when we go to Camden Bottoms in 2023, we planted Camden that year and we planted Gin Creek. We got through planting that year. It stayed wet real long. We had a late flood come in, took out Gin Creek. So the only thing we were left with was Camden in 23. So in Camden, we planted our plots. We went in and we used planted 8 varieties, 3 rows each, at 25,000 plant population. As you see on plant pop, it varied from 25, 28, 25, 23, 24. Seed size was huge on the planter we used because we didn't change anything up once we set it. We planted that one on June 1st, which is kind of early. I mean, for a duck code and WMA, it's really early. And we planted about 15,000 seed per variety, which gave us a little over 4 acres, 4.8. One thing I like to point out to you that you look at is depending on your situation when it comes to duck holes. Some people have blinds, and when you go in and hunt these blinds, they have really tall blinds. They need a really tall plant to be able to help hide and cover that blind. But then at the same time, they may only have water that comes up yay high. So now we need a tall plant with low ear height. Then I'll go to other places, talk to other people who come into my office, and they'll have a blind that's not tall. It'll be a shorter blind, and they can only pump in about 2 foot of water in at max. So now I need a short plant with a short ear height. So when we're doing when we start trying to look at our plant characteristics to fit a certain variety to a certain situation, these are the things we're looking at first and foremost. Then we'll go to yield. But if you look on the ear height, everything's a 2, so everything's a 2, but you go from a 2.9, which is a high, all the way down to a 2.49 or 2.19. You got to remember these are averages. We go in and rate multiple plants per variety throughout each row planted, and we give ratings. When we do these ratings, you'll notice that if it's a 2.19, that means you had some of those ear heights that were well at a foot. And then and then when you get 2.9, you get some that are 3 foot high. So it varies, the averages are there. And then the same thing with the heights. You'll see on the plant heights, anything from 7.97 all the way down to 7.1. Then I'll tell you a bunch of those plants at 7.01 was all the way down below 6 foot. And so when we start doing our measurements, you see the averages, and I try to relate that with yield to fit their situations when they come to me. Now, standability to me is probably as much important as anything else. If you got a place where you're taking boats in and out, you want to plant this. It's got as good a standability rating as possible in these situations. And this is before it even gets water. So some of these on that year, you get 3s and 4s and 2s. So standability of that year was a little tough. But at the same time, we're matching standability with our other plant characteristics. Then we come down and then we do all that in October. They start flooding about the 3rd week in October, Candy Bottoms. So we'll go to our dry harvest ratings in Camden. We'll normally do that about that week before we shut the gates. Then we'll come back, and in duck season, normally the weekend of Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, is the open day duck season. And then the second open weekend, normally it'll start about that following Saturday. It'll skip 5 days, and then we'll open back up. But there's a 5-day period in there. And normally when we go back in there and do our flooded harvest, it's somewhere around that 60-day period. And that 60-day period, when we go back in, that's when we go in and collect our data. We talk about what is the water depth, what is the water depth what's the difference between the water, the ear height and the water depth itself. And then we'll go in there and talk about feed ratings. And you'll notice there's 2 sets of everything. And the one thing in Camden, when we go, we have the road end of the field and we have line 106. And if we went back and looked at, sorry about that. We go back and look. In Camden, this is the Highway 70 area right here. This right here is the road. And this is 106. So we take ratings here, we take ratings here. And the reason we do that is many of our fields are exactly the same way as this field is. This field slopes. And it slopes from the road, and as you go to 106, it goes down, the slope does. So when they flood that water, that corn is not all under the same depth at the same time, which is really good for them. Because, and even if we talk about this on certain farms, if people's got really good slope fields, is you can plant the same variety, go all the way through and know that early season you're gonna have this much corn, and the later season as the water goes up from the rains and the snow and the sleet and the water level comes up, as that time goes by, that also helps you out, and you have food at the latter part of the season, so they don't eat it all out at the very beginning. If it's all at the same time, then they can eat the whole bottoms out and you got corn left. On this way, now you've got a slope, and you only pump so much water in, and in Camden, in that field, man, that thing was growing, didn't it? That field, they know exactly how much water normally fills up over here, so they don't have to add water to it. And I'll kind of give you an idea. On flooded depth, it says flooded water depth. You'll notice on the road side of the field, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then you get over to the other side, it's 2. Same variety goes from less than a foot to over 2 foot. It varies in slope. And to kind of give you a bigger idea, flooded water depth at that mark is about 1 to 2 foot. When we go back and do our final ratings the week or 2 after season ends, it could be 6 to 8 foot in that field. That's how much water fills up in that field all the time. You'll have to have, you go hunt blind 10, you draw blind 108, tier 2 blind, in that the TWR blind draw that they have. You better have at least 6 to 8 foot or even 9 foot straight on some of the vehicles you're at the hunt. That water's going to much. I mean, it gets really deep. So, but anyway, it starts out there, and then you see the ear height is 1.63, and that's feet in inches. And when we get all the way through here, you'll notice the feed ratings, 0.7 to 2.3. We got the overall feed rates are all zeros here, other than this, a few over here. And we found out that year that, there were some rise spots in there. Rise spots, we checked the rise spots where they had, I don't know what it is, something in there rose up where the ground's a little bit higher. You had a higher feed rate for whatever reason they got in there. We think that they got in there on their rise spots, pulled in their hay. That's what they did. So, but anyway, that, when we went back in, we had 95% of all things, all plants sampled, the ears were gone. That tells you how much they ate in 60-day season. How that food. So, but anyway, we want to take this data, we kind of let them see the feed rate, see everything, and go with it. Now that was in 23. In 24, I want you to kind of turn around and look at this. This is a Gin Creek. That year the cannon bottom was, it didn't flood out, it was dry, it didn't bake, the data wasn't good. So we threw the cannon bottles on that, but we kept this. So that's why we normally try to do 2 each year. Is so we'll have data for at least one of them. We planted this one, where the last one was planted on June 24th, or June 1st. This was planted June 24th. So we're at the end of June. We see our yields this time. If you look, our yields are slightly lower this year than they were the previous year. I mean, there's a lot of people that like to plant June corn and have 155 bushel corn. I mean, that's pretty good stuff. But we planted about a month later, you'll notice that in 24 that the yields do drop. But over here, one thing, it was a great year. We planted it, got it in the ground, and we got a bunch of rains in June and July. It actually looked like 3 rivers went across this field to get part of the water. I mean, it was literally rivers going across it. And when it's all said and done, even with all the flood water, these plants still survive in the wet bottoms. For me, that made it a lot of fun because how many people go plant a duck hole and then it gets water on it over and over and over for the next month and a half? Happens a lot more than you think. This corn still was able to make good ears, even though it sat in water all the way through July. Don't know how, but it did. Then it turned off dry in August, and it had a good enough fruit base. It took off and still produced a pretty good ear. If you will notice that on the flooded ear height, I mean the pre-flooded ear heights, everything here was with the tubes, pretty common, a little bit up and down. The plant height was 6s and 7s. Most up lines, that's a good height, wasn't too far off. Yields were there. Standability. You may notice the difference between standability between this year and that here. Standability all 5. You couldn't rock it. Then we went in here to plant populations. It really varied. We had 23,500 and it varied anywhere from 19 to 24, and it was up and down. Seed, a lot of seed size was the issue that year. Flooded depths, we go into our flooded data. We noticed the water depth was all about 2. And then the flood difference was all zeros. When you see the difference between water level, means the ears were underwater. Every ear was underwater, so that's why there's 0.0s. On the flood rating, on the feed ratings, I'm sorry, you'll notice you had 1s, 4s, 3s. It really varies up and down on the feed ratings. But there again, if you go back and we look at our January, we went there right after season ended in January, every ear of corn was empty. All the kernels were gone. They absolutely ate that field up. They said that it was probably eaten up. They had really eaten that field pretty good. They had good year, Gin Creek. That one was, like I said, planted up. It was 15 varieties instead of 8. We jumped up a little bit. We planted a higher, instead of having 15,000 seed per variety, we planted 20,000 seed per variety on that one to get our distance that we planted. When I look at this kind of stuff, and I pass these sheets out, I know a lot of people say, well, there's not much variation. And I try to remind everybody over and over, like I said once already today. When you get in here looking at it, just because it says 2, you need to see is it 2, 2.1, 2.2, or is it 2.9 or something? Because you got to remember it's a variation of lots of plants. So upper 2 means you're gonna have a lot of plants that are above 3 foot. If you got a bunch that are below or 2.1, you're gonna have a bunch of these that are 1 foot. So if you're really looking for that ear height, that's where I'm looking at, is that lower echelon of it. Now, one thing we also, man, this thing's quick. The other thing we look at, if you can kind of figure out how to get that one on there, is Millet, how many of y'all plant millet? Anybody plant millet for duck oaks? How many of y'all plant golden millet? Or do you prefer Japanese? What do y'all plant? What's y'all's favorite? Round top?
Been planting Japanese.
Japanese millet is a common one, it's a cheap one, but a lot of people our way got to talking about, hey, which one do you like better? So we hear about this other one, and I go in there and look and say, So we pulled in a couple of years, I don't know, a few years back, we went in and we tested it side by side of the golden millet and the Japanese millet. A lot of them say that if you plant gold, it costs a little bit more money, but at the same time, it will provide a bigger head, not be quite as tall, maybe be a little shorter. And when we did ours, it was completely the same. The height was the same, the heads, we measured the heads out, everything was equal. We couldn't find a difference. And one of the biggest difference was price. You're gonna pay more for a bag of golden millet than you would gold. Now, I've had some other local folks that have did their own comparisons, and they told me they did see where the gold was a little bit bigger heads. And, but even on standability, because we all know millet's only gonna stand for so long, and then it's gonna go down. Water degrade that as time goes by. And even though that, we didn't see any difference once it was flooded. We put it in the duck hole down in the Big City River. And so for us, it's great. Japanese, gold, either one's fine. For me, for my price, I like Japanese. But I've got producers who really like gold, but either one is a great source. And if I've got a duck hole,
Is this lower right, is that the difference in the two varieties, heads, or is that the same variety?
that was the same. I never took a picture of the side because they were all the same. That's my bad. But they all, I mean, size of seed, everything was the same. I couldn't get any difference between the two. But then we used the gold and the Japanese, we planted both. And, we had a heck of a stand. I mean, we really did. We just, we cut the field in half and did 2 blocks and then prepared 2 blocks. And, of course, we had a big corn block down the side of it. But, for me, it's great to fill in some spots. If I've got a duck hole and I know that I can't get into a certain spot, until late into August, then I'm gonna go in here and probably put millet around those spots. That's just me. And then I'll try to put corn everywhere else I can. I will try to come in there and get corn close, but I know a lot of our guys, we can get 95% of the duck holes planted, but then there's that one spot or 2 spots or whatever. So we go in with the millet in those spots. Or if we know we really want to put some stuff in front of it, we got a lot of action, a lot of decoys, moving things, we want the front. We don't have to deal with the corn stalks every time we go out there and trip over them. Then we recommend for them to go with the millet in there as well. It's a great opportunity. I didn't put anything for 25 in here yet because we've got the dry land data out of Camden. We pre-planted Camden this year. Gin Creek, we just couldn't get in. And by the time it dried out, we were gonna go plant, got a 3-inch rain and it was done. We couldn't get back in. They have a cutoff date of when you can plant these bottoms.
Which one of the corn varieties is best planted June?
In June, I would think any of it, June, I mean, as a whole. I mean, a lot of those, it all goes back to me. Like I said, the yield's not enough difference in some of this. It's gonna be your plant. If you don't care of the height or anything, it all just depends what you want. As you notice on those sheets, those things, they're so close together as a whole. Usually you're gonna say the low side or the high side on those height ranges. The yields, I'm not too big on. I try to stay off the yields a little bit because we all know yields will vary, especially per duck, like per field, per duck hole, the yields will change. So we know it's a little different. The one thing we did this year that's different, we went in and we planted our standard corn block. And everything was great. Got in there, drought, really tough on it, but we still got some good data off of it again. Then we turned around and TWR had asked me if I would do a maturity plot. And I said, sure. I said, what are we looking at? He says, we get lots of phone calls from farmers or hunters, not farmers, I'm sorry. Hunters want to know about these 79 and 69-day corns. How are they going to do? Can they grow here? If we draw a blind and plant it in August, is it going to come up? So we went in and planted we had a 69-day, a 75-day, a 106-day, a 110, and a 111, and 116 and 118. The 116, 118, the reason I threw it in there is we wanted to see if we get some more data on. These are short stack varieties. They're supposed to be grow shorter, and we were just trying to see how they would grow with those others. So we threw them in there, even though we knew it probably wasn't going to work, mate, because of the maturity dates. So we went in and planted all those maturities. It ended up being 10 varieties of them. 9 or 10 varieties, something like that. So we got in there, planted them July 24th, then turned around and planted them again August 4th. We ain't had saw a rain in so long in those fields. We turned the down pressure down as far as you get. You know how far we can get seed in the ground? About a quarter inch at best. Anywhere from a quarter inch to on top of the ground. It was like planting on concrete. Literally that big bottoms. I mean, it was rough. So we planted it, and the June 24th came up, which I couldn't believe. And we didn't see a drop of rain until on those fields. I think they got a little bit of rain at the end of August, a little shire, not big. Then they got another one about the end of September. And even with that, we still got plants to come up. We got ears set on those plants. Our biggest problem we ran into where we planted them, because we didn't put them in front of any of these duck lines, we planted them on the back side of the bottoms, is the deer. Deer were going in there, you know, on what we planted on July 24th, and they were eating all the cob except for this much. They were just biting it off, taking it. So we were left with very few ears that weren't eaten. But what was left on the 75-day corn, which was a decaf, it actually was doing pretty good. It put ears, it had kernels, it was growing, and it wasn't denting, and we weren't even close, because, I mean, you gotta think, we weren't even close to 69 days or 75 days yet, but it was growing and doing well. The 69-day was stressed a little bit. It wasn't doing quite as well, but it still was growing. I tell you, the better looking one of the bunch that we saw there was a 106 day maturity group. So that kind of surprised me. Now, when we went over to the August 4th planting, it pretty much, I got a text. We went and looked about 3 weeks ago. We didn't have an ear yet. And I got a text 2 days ago. We still don't have an ear. So the difference between July 24th and August 4th versus no ear versus ear. So, but at the same time, do I think we should have had an ear on all of it? Yes. Do I think not getting a drop of rain on that thing hurt it severely? Yes. But if you're going to plant at the end of July and you're going to plant the 1st of August, environmental conditions are going to be your biggest problem. And if you don't get those water, you're in trouble. Now, I don't know about y'all, and this is not a UT recommendation, but on video. And, but if it was my duck hole, let's just say if I had a duck hole and I was going to plant it, especially if I was going to plant my duck hole really late in July, then I'm probably going to go out there and make sure I hit it with it. I'm probably going to rough that ground up pretty good. I'm probably not going to go till that ground. I'm probably going to just take the top a little bit, open it up. Some of those bottoms, sometimes you ever heard you kind of need to give a little air, open them up. That's kind of me. I sometimes think, you know, giving a little air on some of those duck bottoms that seal and stay muddy and wet and had water on it forever. Open it up, you'll see a little bit better, I think, sometimes. Not always. A lot of times, if it was mine, I'm gonna go try to, I'm not gonna rip it, but I'm gonna try to get it, work it up just a little on top, go in there, maybe put a little liquid fertilizer on it. If I had it, in other words, I'm saying that if it's dry, ain't gonna rain, I'm trying to get anything liquid there somewhere. But even if it's not liquid, it's dry, try to get it roughed up, open up that ground a little bit, give it some air, take off. That's if it was mine, that's kind of what I like. But we don't have enough data to say that here, because most years we're just barely, we're either no tilling it to these bottoms or barely just scratching it. We're not doing it, we're not going in there, so I don't have any data on that other. But when I talk to other people who put a lot of duck holes, any of y'all rip y'all's ground or scratch it up before y'all plant your corn, or do you no till everything on ducks? But everybody got a duck over here. Everybody got a duck over here. You guys, okay, I just want to make sure somebody's got a duck over here. But anyway, that's kind of where we are on this. We've got some good varieties. If you go look at the one to answer your question earlier, depending on planting date, when you say June, we're talking early June, we're talking late June. We talk, I mean, because that's two different monsters when you start talking about duck corn and when you get into the ground.
Yeah.
I've had some good years. We've got it in there at the end of May. Man, it's heard that's one good duck corn. And then I've got in there in some other years, and we got it in there into May and got too much water, sat water, and you just, we lost
What
water.
else can you plant in a duck hole that's good for deer and ducks too?
You know, a lot of people used to like to put in milo. You know, the trouble with milo is what height do you want? And if you're duck hunting it, y'all know as well as I do, you get in there and you plant it thick. You gotta run that motor through that stuff, it can get interesting. And if you're walking through it, that even gets more interesting, you know, so, the problem with some of that is, you know, if you, it can make it interesting, or it can make it hard on you when it gets cold and stuff. So deer hunting, you can work around cut trails, and you can do the same thing. But you gotta be careful, because you cut some of these trails with CWR, they may consider that baiting. So, yeah, it worries me when it comes to, when you start talking about bush hogging things, you try to do things, that may not fit in their protocol, so you'd have to get that use. But a lot of people are away, if they're gonna do ducks, deer, you know, they think about the corn, milo, kind of what they go with. And, outside of that,
Patrick, what row space do you plant this corn on? 30?
30s, that's all we do. Yeah. I mean, now, some guys going with 20s, yeah, but 30 makes it a lot easier for duck hunting, in my opinion, you know, fit down some rows. So, if you're gonna do, of course, UT's got great publications. Some of these publications are really good. If you want a mix for a deer hoe, for turkeys, for whatever, these publications have got some of that. You go in there, they'll have a breakdown for waterfowl. Dr. Craig Harper's doing a great job with that. Those publications are really good. Now, the bottom one, it's just a feeding guide. It's really quick. Tim Kenley's given that out his whole career. It's a great guide. But these other two are publications that were put out. They talk about, the one publication really talks about, oh, shoot fire, chemicals and things that apply to the grounds for different situations, weeds. That's all included in there. But what I wanted to show you is this one. Now, this is something that was sent to me, or we did one of these on Zoom. Myself, my son, and the outdoor recreation specialist did one for the Upper Cumberland area. And we did the first half on moist soil type, waterfowl habitat, and then we did the other part on corn and milo and so forth. And this publication, Waterfowl Habitat Management Handbook, is a wonderful publication. It talks about everything. It talks about putting in pipes to bring water in and out. I mean, it talks A to Z. Gets in the very bottom of it. It talks about the different plants. One thing that we always like to stress to folks when we talk to folks about this is don't just go in and plant what you got in your field and say that's it. You know, we all know when we flood a field, that water a lot of times is going to go into the woods sometime, depending on your situation, may go off in some different areas. If you'll go out and scout those areas either before you flood or maybe after you flood and see what plants you got, you may find out you've got some really good habitat in some other areas that will help provide food. You may have more food that you offer than what you know. So, you know, maybe just the corn or something else, depending on your situation. We've got guys that'll flood and they'll do a bottoms and they'll get a part of an area and have a bunch of woods and they'll have a batch of food. And they'll always wonder why they got so many ducks over here when it's not really, really cold, you know, it's above 40 degrees or whatever. And they'll find out that they had a ton of stuff over there that they're eating. They like it. They need high energy. They come over and eat more of that corn. But otherwise, they're over in the woods and they're competing for themselves sometimes. It's kind of a weird deal. Can you hit that for me? Dogs. But one thing I don't talk about is rice. and we just don't have it our way. We don't mess with it. But rice is mentioned in here. If we'll scroll down, you will scroll down a little bit, get it to the page. There you go. Rice fields are especially important. I mean, that's, this book covers it all. And it's for the lower Mississippi, so you would think that they would cover rice and that as well. But, if you kind of scroll down that publication, use that pub, it's a really great publication to go through anything from even talks about weeds, it talks about chemicals, it talks about plants to select for moist soil areas. It talks about crops. So, I mean, it's a really informative publication. I'd recommend it to anybody that's trying to do it. But, go back to your question over, if I was gonna plant early June corn and I was trying to find something, I was strictly worried about yield. You know, what we ran into was that aggregate on that sheet and decaf maybe too high yields. Now, that could vary from place to place. But at the same time, if I'm gonna go late, I wanna go late June. I would say probably my 139 was another decaf. When you look at these sheets, decaf, you'll notice a lot of decaps, they've done pretty well in these stressed areas. So I'm not saying that they're the best, but I'm gonna say that they've done really well in those areas. And it varies from year to year. I'll be honest with you, there's a couple of years where you got the variety or two that most people would never plant in a row crop field that was on there. It's got a different name. That's probably a year-old corn seed, and it competed with everything was brand new seed. It was kind of a wild deal. The ones who had that seed asked us if we wanted to try to test it out. We said, sure. It's the same situation. Sometimes y'all are going to have year-old seeds, so we want to toss it in there and see how it did. It did just as good when it competed with everybody else. But when it's all said and done for us, it's not about the yield. It's all about plant characteristics, fit the situation, fit your slopes. If I got an area that I know that's really sloped up, and I know I can't put corn there because I never get the water in that area, then that's where we'll go put my millet. I'll make sure I got millet right there. Or if I got it vice versa, I will, I try to utilize millet and my corn characteristics to figure out how to fit my needs for my situation. What I try to do with most of my guys. And it works pretty good with them, but it will vary. As I showed you 23 data, 24 data, and now 25 data, all three of those years in those data, in those planting dates had different environmental stressors when it came to rain. Some years it was a really wet year. One year was really wet. This year it was really dry. And 2 years ago, it was about right. It was a good year. So 3 years, completely different, and all varieties were different. My problem was, when we did it, you can't ever get the same varieties twice. You're used to that, row crop world. It's hard to get the same varieties, so it's hard to get 2 years data, like we do with some of our row crop stuff. It just doesn't happen. Like I said, it's something different we do. You can utilize it. We'd love to share it with you. We're hoping to do the maturity plot again next year to see how the 6978 might do different if it was not a type of year like it was this year, where we just didn't get a solid rain this late year to be able to make it grow. And it kind of gets you, that right there was your ears from 24 at J Creek. A lot of people last year loved that ears look like that, especially planted in the end of June, G24. Not bad. Anyone else got a question?
So you haven't tried any of those corn varieties that are starting.
But we planted the Smart Stacks this year, and we had 2 of them. They're both full season varieties. And, they look pretty good, but we hadn't got all the data calculated for this year's stuff yet. We normally wait to do all that when we get the, flooded data, which we'll have that in a month. We'll be able to go in and get that, collect that data. But, it's kind of neat. If y'all got a place and if you call your guy, how many of y'all ever called somebody for your duck hole and said, hey, I want a corn for my duck hole, it's gonna fit me, and they get you a variety that's got a low ear. Y'all ever called anybody, got those before, called your seed rep, called your co-op and asked, when you get it, are you planting it when you plant the rest of your corn, or you plant it when you plant it late? Any of y'all plant late? How late do y'all plant?
It's always at least June in my spots.
We got guys,
Maybe 4th of July.
we got guys that can't get in there before the 4th of July. A lot of them are, it's gonna be between 4th of July and the 20th, probably, some of our guys do. They'll still get ears, sometimes they won't look like that, they'll still get some ears. But most time, the later you get in July, the farther away you get from that. The end of June, you can get corn like that. And like I said, you're asking which corn would you do? If I planted June 24th and 24 at Gin Creek, that's all the varieties we planted. And all of them for a duck, that's as good duck corn as you could have. I mean, so to me, like I said, when you were talking about feeding a duck, the varieties, those varieties right there work great, every one of them, when you talk about yield on planting June 24 corn. The issues we went from there was we want to know how to place it in our situation. But that corn, I'll take that all day in my duck house, if it was nice.